How to become RX. So I wanted to talk about this because the current offering that I see both online and in many gyms that I've dropped into and trained in on a recurring basis, the current offering is focused on skill drills and motor learning processes for individuals who want to become RX. They want to do ring muscle ups, they want to handstand walk. And I'm going to talk about why this isn't what those individuals need at this stage in their development. So, if you look at an athlete who cannot yet do the RX movements, the RX gymnastics movements, they often lack the absolute strength to perform slow contractions in the manner that they need to. So, when you look at the contractions that happen to perform a ring muscle up or to perform handstand walking or a handstand push up, etc., the contractions are fast dynamic contractions. So there's a speed component to the contractions that are happening. And when you add speed to a contraction, that inherently lowers the amount of force that you can produce. This is the force velocity curve. It's just a law of physics. And so because all the RX movements are dynamic, there's a speed component to them that moves them down the force velocity curve towards the speed end and inherently lowers the amount of force that you can produce. So if the amount of absolute strength that you have, meaning the top end force that you could possibly produce in a slow manner, is not high enough, then when you try to add speed to it, you're not going to be able to produce enough force to perform the movement. So let's take an example like a ring muscle up. Say you have 4 strict pull-ups or can't do a strict pull-up or can't do a weighted pull-up. In that case, the amount of force that you can produce relative to your body weight is not high enough. And when you try to add speed to that through the form of swinging on a bar, whether it's banded or your foot on a box or whatever, you're really just dancing around what the real issue is, because you're treating it like a motor learning problem when in reality you don't yet have the attribute that's required for it to even become a motor learning problem. So at the end of the day, it's really a strength problem. And so what is needed instead? Well, you need absolute strength. And what the benchmarks are 40% of your body weight added for males, 33% of your body weight added for females, weighted pull-up and weighted dip. And once those absolute strength standards are in place, the RX movements become much more attainable. And the eventual goal is for the RX movements to become easy. It's not just for them. It's not just to get your first one, even though that is really thrilling and exciting. If you have the absolute strength base of support, most people who have that base of support can do 5 bar muscle ups the first time they try and do them. So is your goal really to just do 1 bar muscle up, or is it to do a set of 10 or to do them in a workout? So that's a major difference in intention. So I'm going to speak to those who, instead of feeling like they can do bar muscle ups or wanting to feel like they can do bar muscle ups, or wanting to feel like they can do the open RX, I'm speaking to those who are like, no, I don't really care about what I feel in my current self. I want to change. I want to grow. I want to become RX. I want to actually change so that I can do these standards. And I think that's a lot of people. So what does the program look like for an individual who doesn't yet have those absolute strength benchmarks to gain those absolute strength benchmarks? And what that program looks like is a lot of tough contractions. So what is a tough contraction? Well, it's slow. So it's not a dynamic contraction. There is no speed component. There's no speed of movement. There's no ballistic or change of direction component. There's no stretch shortening cycle. So right there, you essentially rule out all the movements that appear inside of CrossFit workouts. So scaling bar muscle ups to hanging knee raises, or scaling bar muscle ups to toes to bar and then doing those as fast as you can, or there are plenty of other examples, but those aren't tough enough contractions because you're trying to do it fast. So you're not able to produce enough force to change your force production capabilities to gain the absolute strength that you need to then add speed to it later. So by trying to add speed to everything all the time, you're not developing the attribute that you need to actually do the RX movement. So this is the great confusion around scaling, because and it's completely understandable, because you look at a bar muscle up, you think, okay, well, I can't do that, or my athlete can't do that. So I need to find a way, a modification, a scale that they can do that vaguely resembles that movement itself. And so it makes sense. You're saying, yeah, well, I'm replicating the movement. And if they do enough of that replica, then eventually they'll be able to do the real thing. And the problem with that way of thinking is that it's not supported by physics. So again, if you don't have the absolute strength, then focusing all of your energy onto skill drills, treating it as a motor learning problem without addressing the absolute strength is a dead end. So I could go on and on about the examples that I see both on the internet and inside of gyms, but fundamentally, the difference in intention is, rather than coaches telling athletes, the open is for everybody, and while you can't do bar muscle ups, you can put your foot on a box and swing on a bar, and that's basically the same thing. Versus saying, no, you can't do bar muscle ups. Pause on that for a moment. Right now, with your current attributes, you can't do bar muscle ups. That is a challenging thing to present to somebody. So it's completely understandable why in gyms all across the world, instead of saying that, coaches are saying, oh, no, the open's for everybody. And even though you can't do bar muscle ups, you can scale it. So you're basically doing the same thing. It makes people feel like they belong. It makes people feel like they're doing the same thing that the RX athletes are doing. And the problem with that is that there are some people, and if you listen to me, this is probably you, who are like, that's not interesting to me. I don't want to feel like I'm doing bar muscle ups. I want to do bar muscle ups. So what is the path to that? You don't want to be coddled. You don't want to be supported. You want to be challenged. And so speaking to those individuals who hear that are like, oh, geez, yeah, that's not me. I don't want to feel like I belong. I want to become RX. I want to do the RX movements, and I want to do them in workouts, and I want to look like I can do the RX movements and everything that comes along with that. It's like, okay, well, you must change then. And if that sounds like you, then I'm going to get a little more specific on what exactly the path is to get from where you are right now to having the attributes that you need to do the RX movements. So what that looks like, if you can do less than 5 strict pull-ups, is 2 years, thereabouts, of tough contractions. What is a tough contraction? It's slow and it's difficult, meaning you approach failure when you do it. So that doesn't mean doing ring rows as fast as you can with 20 reps in reserve at the end of every set. It means doing ring rows to failure for as much as you can recover from. So it's a different intention from, okay, I'm going to do 10 down to 1. It's supposed to be dynamic pull-ups, but I can't quite do that yet. So I'm going to do ring rows and wall balls. And I'm going to do that as fast as I can. It's like, okay, well, 2 years later, you're still going to be doing that same version of that workout, which is not what a lot of people don't want. That they want to actually change. They want to fundamentally change. They want to change. So they need the path that's going to challenge them in the right ways so that they can change and become RX. So it's tough contractions in the major patterns without any emphasis at all put on motor learning. So you're not doing any bar muscle up drills. You're not doing any plank shoulder taps for your handstand walk. You're not doing any of that. You're just doing tough contractions. And do that for 2 years. And as far as what the week looks like, do all the major patterns: push, pull, lunge, squat, bend, and do it as often and as much as you can recover from, which for most individuals looks like 2 or 3 times a week per pattern. Usually can handle slightly higher frequency with pushing and pulling than with squatting and bending and lunging. So for most individuals, that's 2 or 3 times a week in volumes that you can recover from so that you can train with enough frequency and be recovered by the next session in that week to do that pattern again. And repeat that for 2 years. That's it. It really is that simple. So as far as what exactly the program design looks like, we have templates online for that. You can go and look on what does the sample week of the RISE program look like, and does my training look anything like that? Does it look anything like that? Because if it doesn't look anything like that, if it's like, well, I kind of just do CrossFit workouts scaled and then I do some bar muscle up drills. I've seen it over and over again. Those individuals 2, 3, 4, 5 years later are still doing the same versions of those workouts. So if that's not what you want, if you really want to change, you really want to progress, you really want to be an athlete, you really want to commit to the sport, you really want to do whatever it takes, you really want to hear the truth, you really want to be challenged, you don't want to feel like you belong, you want to change, then do tough contractions. Do them in all the major patterns. Do them in volumes that you can recover from as frequently as you can, which is 2 to 3 times a week per pattern. And just do that. Just do that for 2 years. Or as long as it takes. Do that for as long as it takes to get the absolute strength standards. And then once you have those absolute strength standards, when you hop up on a bar, your body is going to feel completely different than what you remember. And that's the path, guys. So I hope that's helpful for those of you listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.